Hello, I'm Geoff Kersey, and in this lesson we're going to work with just one brush and two colours, Aureolin and Ultramarine. And this will open up a whole world of greens to us. So let's start by squeezing some of those into the palette. We need to squeeze about a good inch of paint out so that we don't run out halfway through mixing the colours. And then get a good brush full of water and run some of that water off on the edge of the jar. And we're going to start by just adding some Aureolin to it. No blue added at this time. Just get a nice, bright, fresh mix of Aureolin. And that gives us a really bright yellow colour. Add a bit more of it in, and then just a touch with the very tip of the brush into the blue and add that to it, and we get like a sort of spring or a lime green, quite a nice bright vivid green. Now we're going to add a touch more blue and make an even stronger green, but in order to help to make it stronger it needs to be a bit thicker as well, so I'm going to add some more Aureolin and a touch more water so that I've got more paint to work with. And then again a touch of ultramarine blue, but it's a bit more this time. And you can see now how that gives us a richer, stronger green, like a summer green. But it's not too strong, it's not too dark, it's a nice rich colour. Okay, I'm going to continue to add more Aureolin to it because each time I paint these colours I'm using up the paint I've got. I can't just make it go further by adding water, I've got to add more pigment as well. And now let's get a good brush full of ultramarine so that the green gets richer and darker. And that's a nice rich colour. And then finally, a touch more Aureolin, but this time quite a lot of ultramarine. The blue has now got to dominate so that we've got a real rich bluey green. The darkest colour of all of them. A really good brushful. It's important that this dark colour doesn't have as much water in it, but has more pigment so that it's stronger. Okay, just one important thing to remember, when you're mixing those greens, always put the yellow in the palette first and add the blue. The blue is the more dominant colour, and if you try adding yellow to blue, you can never get it light enough. Well, now that we've mixed the colours, let's have a look at how we could apply those to a simple landscape. I'm going to take a ruler and rule a line across the paper just about a third of the way up. And then above that line, I'm going to start by putting a few hills in. Don't press on too much. And then I'm going to mix a wash for the sky of ultramarine. It's worth remembering every time, if you're going to paint a wet in wet sky, mix your colour first before you touch the paper, before you wet the paper. Clean the brush again, and it really should be clean. We're going to put clean water on the paper. And working from the top with horizontal strokes, I'm making the paper evenly wet. I don't want any dry patches in it. I want it evenly wet, but not too wet. I don't want puddles, I just want a nice wet background. Ignore the hills. Don't stop painting the sky where the hills start, or they look like they've been cut out and stuck on. Bring the water right down to that ruled line that we put in earlier. Make sure it's nice and wet. Get a good brush full of the ultramarine wash and start laying that in from the top. I'm using horizontal strokes, but I am sloping them very slightly uphill. And then I'm adding a bit of water to the brush so that the paint becomes weaker and paler as I get lower down. Touch more blue into the top to emphasise the fact that the sky is darker at the top and lighter towards the horizon. Now I'm going to thoroughly wash the brush and take most of the moisture off the brush. And I do this by squeezing it between my fingers so that it's just damp but not wet through. And then holding the brush with my thumb at one side of the handle and 4 fingers at the other, I'm using the side of the brush to just a bit of lifting out to try and create some cloud shapes. You can't do much of that before you have to repeat the procedure, clean the brush, rub it between your fingers again, and then a bit more lifting out. And I'm following that sort of slightly uphill angle to the strokes. Now as we come lower down, I'm changing my grip on the brush to like that, and I'm using more of the tip of the brush so that the cloud shapes that I lift out of the paper are a little bit smaller, helping to create a feeling of perspective. We don't want to lift off a lot of the blue, it's quite subtle this. And we'll leave that to dry. Now that that's dry, I'm going to get another wash of ultramarine, the same consistency as we've just used in the sky, quite a bit of water with it, and start to put in the distant hills. Bringing this right down to the straight line. This has got to be quite a pale wash at first so that these hills look a long way away. And it's important here to use the very point of the brush so that you can control it and get a nice straight line. And then we'll leave that to dry. Now that that's dry, I'm going to mix 2 colours for the next stage. First one is another wash of ultramarine, a little bit stronger this time. We're going to paint this hill in the centre with a stronger tone so that it comes forward, so it looks further forward. But before doing that, we want a nice rich dark green, and I'm going to take a touch of Aureolin and add plenty of ultramarine blue to it to get a real rich dark green. Plenty of this colour. We don't want to have to stop once we've started on this stage. Starting with the ultramarine blue and using the point of the brush again, let's put the foreground hill in, bringing it out to quite a sharp point, then bringing that all the way down then to the flat line. Let's put a little hill there going off the edge of the picture, and then straight away, and this is why we had to mix it ready, we're going with that dark green. Just, I'm not painting that in so much as just touching it with the tip of the brush to give me a few distant tree shapes. Just letting them spread into the background. Just using the very tip of the brush. Vary them a bit, they all don't want to be the same size and shape. I'm going to clean the brush and I'm going to get just a little bit of Aureolin on the tip of the brush. This is neat Aureolin, I haven't diluted it at all, on the tip of the brush, and add a few little touches of that into it as well. Again, not so much stroking the paint in as just touching the damp paper with the tip of the brush. And then we'll leave that to dry.